what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
So I would say this: first and foremost, the mindset and attitude has to be one that's resilient, right? It's one that a person has to understand that it's going to take grit. It's a grind. It's not easy, but one where you have to believe in your own self, believe in the ability that God has given you. So I think for me, being a man of faith, being a Christian, being a believer, I think that's really helped me understand that God created me for a particular purpose and has a plan for my life. There's a calling for my life. And obviously, I believe your purpose is something you discover. So obviously, just like me right now, discovering my purpose as a speaker, it gives me a sense of purpose, but it also gives me passion, right? I love what I do. So I think in order for people to have the right attitude and mindset, they have to be passionate about the work that they're called to do. And I think if you feel passionate about what you're doing, then when opposition, adversity rises, you'll be able to overcome it because you won't give up. The easiest thing to do when you face trials and tribulations is give up. And I always tell students and educators and people that you can't give up. You have to persevere. Right. And perseverance is something that you have to sustain over time. It could take months, it could take years, it could take decades, but you can't give up. You have to have an attitude and mindset that says, I can rather than I can't. I will rather than I won't. Because the battle, as my grandmother always said, the battle starts right here in the mind first. So the first thing we have to tackle is the mindset. I always say that, I heard this from Nehemiah Davis, that oftentimes in life, people don't have a skill set problem. They have a mindset problem. Wow. It's not that we lack skill, talent, or ability. It's oftentimes that we just don't believe in ourselves. So it reminds me of the quote, right? There's a quote that says, fear has kept more people from accomplishing their goals than failure ever will. So it takes courage, but courage is having the right attitude and mindset that I can do this, I will do it. It may not be easy, but I just have to be consistent. I have to, establish good habits, and over the course of time, it will come to pass.
That's right. Being resilient is important. And as you mentioned, that it's not going to be easy. Once we decide that we want to do something, we have to make up our minds that, man, by any means necessary, we're going to push through the challenges, the setbacks, the disappointments. And that's something that cannot be said too many times. We can't oversay. We have to be resilient when it comes to pursuing whatever goal. But you said something that really resonates, and I think everyone should pay attention, that pursuing something that you are passionate about gives you the drive, that inner drive, to press forward when faced with adversity. So I really appreciate that perspective and reminder to all of us who are on a journey to make an impact. So my next question is, what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
So my advice, first and foremost, would be, so outside of mindset, which we discussed, I think we need to be competent, right? I think we need to really value education. And I'm not saying education always has to come from an academic institution, but I'm talking about really valuing just growing and learning, whether it's in a particular area of study, whether it's growing as fathers, whether it's growing as men, whether it's growing as husbands. But I feel like we just need to constantly be educating ourselves. Because I believe one of our greatest assets is our mind, right? I always say our mind is like what I call the human Chromebook, right? So when you have a Chromebook or a MacBook, it has apps, it has resources, right? It's valuable, it's an asset to you. I believe our mind is the same way. If we continue to educate ourselves and we continue to learn and we become competent, then we can help solve some of the problems that exist in society. But we can't be solution driven if we're not educated. So I believe that we have to study. I read something that said that great leaders and those that are highly impactful, they read 3 to 4 books a month. Right. So that's getting a lot of information that you're downloading. You're not going to be able to retain it all, correct, but you need to be able to read so that some things can actually stick with you, so that you can actually be impactful. I think that's a huge way that we can help in regards to changing the narrative.
Man, thanks for sharing that. And that's also a great reminder, because we have to be educated. If we want to provide solutions, we have to learn, because one, we don't know everything, and we shouldn't think we know everything. So if we are dedicated to making a difference, we have to also dedicate ourselves to learn as well. As you mentioned, that leaders are readers. And that's something that you hear a lot. Once you start your journey to make a difference, to become the best version of yourself, you hear that the people who are making a difference are the leaders who really make a tremendous impact. They also are readers. So thanks for that reminder, because as men, we have to take knowledge, information, education seriously to create the change that we want to see around us. And that leads me to my next question. How can we, as Black men, help to create or change the narrative? And these questions are somewhat ties to each other. But how can we help to change the narrative? And you can choose what narrative, being that you mentioned in the beginning that you are in 3 different capacities. So it could be as a father, husband, or teacher, or educator, whatever capacity you think that in regards to changing the narrative.
Yeah, well, let me start out with this. I think growing up, especially in the inner city context, and growing up in the North, right? So I think people's experience maybe in the South, or, once you reach that Maryland, Virginia, DC area may be different from my experience, but I only can speak from my personal experience. Growing up, they say it's 3 things that Black boys typically want to become, especially African-American boys, and that's an athlete, an entertainer, right? Or some type of like rapper or something like that. Yeah. So I didn't want to be a rapper. I didn't want to be an actor, but obviously I fell in love with basketball. But one of the things that I believe is that exposure leads to expansion, right? You oftentimes you aspire to become what you see. So I think one of the ways that we can change the narrative is literally by mentoring individuals, right? I believe mentorship is huge, is valuable. A good friend of mine, Dr. Darius Daniels, always says that we need a therapist for our past, right? The things that we've gone through, but we need a coach for the future, right? So a coach can be a mentor, a coach can be an educator, right? A coach can be a parent, right? A coach can be your neighbor, a coach can be your older brother, but you need someone that can help walk you through this thing called life and give you some type of guidance, give you some type of advice. And for me, I'm fortunate because I understood I needed that in college, and I started praying for that. And one of the greatest decisions, or one of the greatest things or individuals God has ever blessed me with, was my mentor, Charlie Ward. He really helped shape and form me and help cultivate me to be the man that I am today. So I believe mentorship is huge. I believe you need guidance. If you're trying to grow up to be a man of value, a man of valor, you need someone that can really be instrumental in your life to help you, because we all need help. We weren't created to be in this thing by ourselves in isolation.